Hello, I'm waiting for a few people to join in. Hi Sadhya, how are you? Hi Aarti. Where are you from, Sadhya? Great. Good to see you here. Doing great, doing great. Okay, born in Mumbai, live in Dubai. Wonderful. Oh, that's sweet. Supporting the BFF. Hi Astha, how are you? So what is your opinion on nobody is born bad or evil? Pe- People who believe in karmas, people who believe it in a different aspects of birth or rebirth might think differently, but I believe on that nobody is born evil, nobody is born bad, and to get on these discussions further, today we are getting on another episode of emotional abuse where we are not able to hear you. Okay. Uh, Anybody else? Can they confirm even if they are not able to hear me? Astha. Thank you, Astha, for confirming that. Okay, thank you. Thank you for confirming. So let me repeat. I was talking about that nobody is born evil, nobody is born bad. But people who may think about the past karmas or born in second life may think it differently. And we are going into another episodes of emotional abuse with Aarti, and the concept is that nobody is born to abuse. They don't pre know or aware about what is abuse, so somehow it happens while they grow. And to put the light on this and help us understand it deeper, Aarti is here and she will be throwing lights on it. So let me invite her to join in. So meanwhile, any other point of view from any audience regarding this concept of anybody past believer of past life, past karma, though we are not getting into that, but still might have different perspective. Hi Aarti, how are you?
Hi, Suchi. Good evening. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Okay, so we have Sejal Jain who believes in past life, past karma. But Wonderful. Maybe people carry forward from their past karmas and then bring out, I believe in reincarnations. Okay, thank you for sharing
Padani
that.
Asta says that too. She believes in
Yeah.
reincarnation. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. But since I'm not aware about how past karma and reincarnations affect our personal state of life and how do we turn up as a human being, and I would like Aarti to throw lights on why do people abuse, and to go on deeper, let's start with something like we hear it commonly on relationships and marriage, and in marriage we also hear about our in-laws, and most of our Bollywood movies or daily soaps might show that mother-in-laws are a torturer people to their daughter-in-laws or something like that. So let's make it more interesting and get into the stuff. Aarti, go ahead.
Great. Thanks once again, Suchi. Lovely to be back, fourth time on your episodes. Lovely. And thank you, audience, for joining us. I think we were off to a great start because this is such a interesting topic. Interesting when we bring in the aspect of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. And so nice that you mentioned we are actually not born to abuse. We are actually not born with these traits. We are so raw. We are just like a blank slate when we are born. How does all this happen to us? Or how do we end up abusing other people? Because in an abuse,
Hmm.
it's definitely more than one person involved. We are not talking about self-infliction or self-abuse here. But yes, when we're talking about abuse to other people, we're talking about two people at least. And when we use the word abuse itself, it means that something is happening from one person to the other person or to
Right.
other persons in plural. So it emanates a very negative feeling when one thinks that one person is abused and the other person is an abuser. So there is a certain set of feelings that get created for the abuser, and there's a certain set of feelings maybe out of empathy or sympathy that get created for the abused. Because more or less we know this from stories or we know this from experience that it's
Hmm.
a negative equation between two people. Now, when you rightly
Right.
said that we are not born to be abused, neither are we born to abuse, then how does this happen? For example, between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, very specifically speaking in South Asian cultures, as we've seen, and it happens, of course, across the board in many other cultures as well, mostly patriarchal. In matriarchal, it's the other way around. There are states in India. Let me just uh, speak about that a little bit at that aspect. There are states in India which are matriarchal in nature, Kerala and many northeastern states, including Meghalaya, etc. Recently there has been a, a bunch of men who have gone into courts in Meghalaya so that they ask for their rights from the court since they were getting abused by their wives.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, so you see,
Interesting.
we are not always looking at this from one angle. We know it as a patriarchal issue most of the time, but we know it as a matriarchal one also. But only thing that it's happening in much less locations, much less as a proportion. So we don't know much about it. So when we say sas bahu or mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, it can happen the reverse order between a mother-in-law and a son-in-law also when it comes to matriarchal society because the women are in
Absolutely.
power in matriarchal society. So you see,
Hmm.
one of the main things we have learned over the entire set of conversations we are having is that let us not restrict it to gender alone. Yes, culturally we know that women are the one who suffer more, report more, and we know more about them. But in the matriarchal society, also these things can happen. And that is why, because of the popularity, either Bollywood or a lot of our television will reflect Saas Bahu.
Hmm.
Why does this happen? That's the core question here. Why would two human beings come in an equation which is supposed to bond them as a family, but you see abuse coming up? And then that reflects on one more thing. Abuse doesn't just come up in bonding of relationships that we make in society. abuse comes up in blood relations also, right? So
Right.
there are many angles to this. The core question
Hmm.
again being why.
Right.
Now, the why around it is very interesting. Is because we have been talking about, child-related abuse. We've been talking about child witnessing an abuse. We've been talking about spousal abuse. We've been talking about all these relationships in the space that abuse happens. But today we want to really take a step back and say why. If ever it happens in any relationship, it basically happens because of some kind of a behavioral nuance, either of the person who has imbibed that behavioral nuance or has observed it.
Hmm.
Now, let's take an example or let's
Okay.
take a couple of things. Sorry, you were saying something?
No, no, I was just recalling the
Okay.
points again. Vibe and
Yeah. So,
observe.
there are many aspects to the why. Okay. Let's count a few traits and let's see what comes up with for us as real life examples. And I'm happy if the audience shares it too. One of the bigger things in abuse is power imbalance. Now, let's just take
Hmm.
power imbalance in a spousal relationship. In cultural settings, a lot of the times, now, like we said earlier, it could be matriarchal or patriarchal. So, we are not looking at gender, we're just looking at the existence of abuse. In a lot of cultural settings, it is socialized or conditioned to the person who is getting married that your spouse is meant to be your subservient to you. For generations, this has happened. Now, if you are already being conditioned to think that you are subservient to somebody or somebody is subservient to you will enter the relationship with that feeling. Even if your self-esteem and self-worth has generally been high as a single individual. And a
Hmm.
person who has been conditioned to believe that the power imbalance is there, it's a trait of a marriage. They believe that that is the case, then they will obviously inflict that power on them. And one of the easiest ways of doing it is through emotional abuse. Why do I say that? We all know about physical abuse. We all can see it in very different settings. Emotional abuse is very hard to see or very
Right.
hard to interpret unless it throws out some outcome of maybe a mental health issue or somebody's breakdown or things like that. Other thing is that emotional abuse cannot be measured so easily. So it becomes a inflicting process for the abuser. Therefore, in a spousal relationship, which is obviously meant as it is in theory, it's meant to be a long-term relationship, we see that emotional abuse keeps a person under control for the longest time in hope and faith, right?
Right.
So, because it cannot be measured and because it is so difficult to identify and so difficult to even talk about, as if it was abuse, it's so difficult to recognize that power imbalance keeps making it a weapon. That
Okay.
because there's a power imbalance, I've been conditioned to think like this about my spouse. It's my right to inflict that abuse. Usually, of course, as we know, we see it in between a man and a woman, more of the man doing it, and in fact, even a lot of films have portrayed it like that. Let's take one example. There is a movie that was made in the West. It was called Provoked. But of course, it had Aishwarya Rai, one of the most senior Indian actresses in this world, being the protagonist of that story, who is married into a family somewhere outside of India. Now, this lady is shown in a scene ironing clothes. Her husband comes from behind her and he starts asking in an aggressive tone, "Where did you spend the money from the bank?" She continues to iron the clothes and very politely, actually, she tells him that I spent it on food for your sons, which is, I think, a perfectly normal answer. But you see what has happened in this particular scene. The fact that the man walks up from behind her husband, behind her wife's
Right.
back, and asks her this question in a very condescending tone, already starts to show a power imbalance. As if to say that that question is my right. The way I ask that question is my right, and the question that is meant to scare you is also my right.
Hmm.
So that already is the emotional abuse part because you're in fear. The same question can be asked in a very friendly, cordial, loving, romantic way also. just to exchange notes on where the finances of the family have gone. But that part was emotional abuse. And emotional abuse can also be a precursor to physical abuse, because in this very movie scene, when she replied that she spent on food for their sons, and everybody knows, and of course she's portrayed in the movie also like that, she's a very beautiful woman. He picks up the hot iron and intimidates her and says that you are too, uh, you're too self-centered, or you're too proud of your beauty. Should I just burn you? Now you see the connection between asking for the finances and doing this as the physical side of the abuse. Although they didn't show the iron actually put on her, but that intimidation itself was bad enough. This emotional abuse led to that possible physical abuse. I mean, it was an intimidation and clear threat. It needn't be like that. In a very normal conversation, needn't be like that. And when you're asking somebody for finances, what has the beauty of that person got to do with it? So you see, the complication here is this. There's a power imbalance. That's one answer to the why. The other part of the why is that the person's own insecurity. The husband may have actually felt insecure that he's not probably as handsome or good looking as his wife.
Yes.
That is why that statement came up. And his insecurity is 24/7. So, beyond the control of the finances, beyond the control of the relationship, the person is also actually uncomfortable about their own insecurities, and it somehow comes up. But that also adds to the emotional abuse, because the beauty of a person, the physical beauty of a person, is just the gift of genes. Why should I be guilty about any kind of looks I have or I don't have? It's a gift of genes. But that is also as an information put against me when I'm being emotionally abused. So you see the power imbalance, the security, the discomfort, all of this makes a blend, a mix for somebody to abuse you. So the why may not be justified. In any case, abuse is not justified, period. The why may actually not be justified, but it comes up as patches, as a jigsaw puzzle, where even the abused person becomes very confused. That one incident, which was not meant to be an incident, became an incident. It got more complicated and led to physical threats only because of insecurities, lack of that person's own self-esteem, the person who is abusing. So there are many whys to this particular incident of abuse that is being filmed, and it is not an unusual incident. It is not an unrealistic scene. Now, the same abuser, to go a little more into the why, the same abuser may have possibly been, like I said, maybe conditioned before getting married, that there is a power imbalance which is obvious according to his conditioning, and which is okay according to his conditioning. The other thing is, even if he is not conditioned verbally by society, that person may have grown up seeing this. Witnessing abuse is one of the causes of becoming the perpetrator of abuse, because your environment makes you learn and be aware of accepted behavior. And this becomes accepted behavior if for 15, 20 years of your early life, formidable years, you've seen this and you think it's perfectly normal. And it could happen either to a woman or to a man. And it's just too unfortunate that if they come into a relationship where they are showcasing or implementing what they witnessed, then it's purely a case of simply copy paste. And they believe that that is also okay. Another one of the
They
reasons
don't
could
have
be
the understanding. They don't have the understanding of that this is an abnormal thing that they are doing.
they don't have an understanding exactly. And
Okay.
they probably even have those kind of conversations in their society, amongst their friends or amongst their peers, or even if they don't have conversations, this may be a big hidden truth of their life, that they may end up doing this when they get married, and it can be quite a surprise to their own friends, to their own family. Maybe not to the family if they witnessed it in the family, but to their friends, to their workplace, to their co-workers. These things can come up as very sudden surprises. Oh, I knew this person as a very normal person working in the office, or a very normal person socializing, partying. I could never imagine they could do this at home to their spouse.
The disowned self has not been in the public place. That the hidden self of the person. Right. Okay. Go ahead.
So probably theoretically they know that it is wrong. Theoretically they know that it is wrong, but they decide to hide it, and they decide that this is a powerful place to be in. So why not just use it? Perhaps, like we had discussed this in one of our previous discussions also, perhaps they would inflict physical abuse in any case on a lot of other
Mm-hmm.
kinds of entities, for example, pets, for example, their toys, because of some kind of frustration and anger. And this mix of conditioning, this mix of learning, this mix of pent up frustration, the mix of unresolved trauma. Why do we say unresolved trauma? Is because if they have witnessed it, they are traumatized, but they don't know that it is trauma and nobody has identified it. And possibly
Mm-hmm.
they have been abused themselves. That becomes another big area of accepting abuse as normal. All of this can sometimes get inflicted on outside parties, like maybe a dog, or maybe a cat, maybe a stray, maybe just some frustration. Maybe when you're traveling in a public transport, you might just get angry over somebody. That anger may be really disproportionate to the incident. But when you get somebody in your life as maybe your partner, and you have this conditioning behind you, it may come out very naturally that this person is my prey for 24/7. And I don't care because I nobody has a right to judge me over it because I own that person. Again, mix of
Mm-hmm.
conditioning, unresolved trauma, witnessing abuse in their childhood or younger years, and not being able to distinguish between the right and the wrong when it comes to behavior with people, normal,
Mm-hmm.
loving, kind behaviors with people. One of the other big reasons around emotional abuse would also be lack of your own sense of self. You don't value yourself, so you don't value anybody else. You don't know where you are, you don't know what you're really doing in life, you're drifting. There is a lot of pent up, unresolved issues, a lot of knots in your own head, and lot of lack of clarity, lot of comparisons. You're sitting in one corner and saying that, oh, that person is becoming successful and becoming a millionaire. Or that person is going out on holidays. And social media does a lot of all this to many people. And you are not willing to take action to be in a certain space, but you're willing to get frustrated and just sit down in one place and nurture that negative feeling. That negative feeling makes you feel unsuccessful. And that feeling of unsuccessfulness or being not being proud of where you are going can immediately come out in your surroundings. And
In the
therefore,
form of either guilt or maybe jealousy.
jealousy is a very big part. You remember we spoke about this movie example, Aishwarya Rai being beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband may have been insecure or jealous about her look, and keeping her confined or being power imbalance in that power imbalance equation is one way of telling her that you should not be looked at by any other man.
Aarti, when we are talking about spousal relationship, there was one person, I would talk about that Dr. Natarajan. He has messaged me that he has seen many people witnessing where, the spouse is abusing female is abusing the counterpart, where because the male is not earning,
Hmm.
so the responsibility imbalance, which is there, where the mindset is that the man should be the breadwinner, and the because he's not fulfilling those responsibilities, the women tends to abuse the men. So throw some light on this point as well, because this may be also an example that we can go ahead.
So, exactly the same point as it would apply for a man. If a woman has been conditioned in a certain way, or the woman finds her self-esteem being pushed up because of that power imbalance, and the woman sees that there is some value that she creates for herself in a self-centered way by criticizing a person for not criticizing his spouse or a partner for not earning, it gives her an ego boost. The ego exists in all human beings, right? We call a lot of ego as male ego, which is its own in its own sphere. It is there, but there is an ego
Mhm.
in other genders also. Plus the insecurity of the woman herself. If a man is considered to be a breadwinner and your man is not the breadwinner, what face do you have in society, right? So her insecurity of facing the society inflicts on her husband in a way that she creates a channel for her pent up anger to abuse him further. So he has,
Mhm.
perhaps for whatever reason, he is unemployed and he's not having an income. That itself is a challenge because you need money for
Right.
survival. On top of that, there is, forget about being supportive. This is going on the other extreme of the spectrum, where the person feels that that power imbalance actually gets created for a self-centered value addition. And that adds no value to the relationship as such. It may make the unemployment problem more critical. It may put the man under more self-worth issues. It may drive the man to a lot of frustration and possibly substance abuse, or maybe going to other women, or doing everything that he can escape from that atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
So it works both ways. A woman may have her own reasons, unfounded, unjustified reasons to abuse a man. A man may have his own. At the end of the day, the bottom line is the abuse isn't justified. But yes, it's important to recognize why there is abuse, because unless we understand the why, unless we understand the human performance and the human behavior aspect of it, we will never be able to understand what to do about it. So there are these, yes, there is a fair possibility that a woman may be harassing her husband emotionally for being unemployed.
So, Aarti, when we're talking about why, does possessiveness or maybe one of the reason why the abuse has been done and how it has been formed, being possessive
Possessiveness,
or
yes,
insecure, also that the spouse might leave.
possessiveness is a very big aspect of abuse. Again, possessiveness is rooted a lot in insecurity. You
Okay.
probably don't have a good sense of self. You're leaning on your identity being created with that of your spouse. Your spouse looks good in society, so I look good, you know. So there's a lot of attachment to their own, the way they project themselves in society.
Mm-hmm.
And possessiveness also comes from looking at spousal relationship as a trophy relationship. What do I mean by that? In front of the society, you may, as a spouse, you may be projecting your spouse as beautiful or handsome, successful, moneyed, having a great career standing, being very talented, being very creative, all of that. Everything about that spouse is appreciative in front of a third party. But in the four walls of the house, the spouse may mean nothing, or the partner may mean nothing to you. The reason for that possessiveness, of course, is rooted in jealousy also, and is rooted in the fact that having a trophy spouse, something which looks good inside but has no value, something which has looks good really outside the four walls but has no value inside the four walls of the house. So this dichotomy that is created by the abuser is rooted in both possessiveness, their own sense of self-worth, low, low, and low, and yes, this jealousy that comes up. You're doing better than I am, but I'm not willing to accept that in any way.
Okay. Okay. There's one more thought that has come to me. Does everything related to abuse is from the conditioning of the childhood that we say 0 to 7 years of learning age or 12 years of learning age, or some people can develop it in the adulthood?
Not every form of abuse is rooted in childhood. Not every form.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, there can be some personality disorders, and psychologists are better placed to talk about this. There can be some personality disorders which can develop at potentially any time in your life, and there could be many reasons for that, which are worth investigating. So not everything may have
Mhm.
childhood trauma or unhealed trauma associated with it. There could be situations and conditions that might develop in later years of life. There could be shocks and trauma you might go through later years in life. Maybe there's one incident that can happen that might throw you completely off balance, and you might become a personality of a certain kind because of that incident. And when I say personality disorders or mental health challenges, we're talking about antisocial personalities called psychopaths or narcissists.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We don't know. There is no particular research which says that narcissists would always have founding in only their childhood, the way they are. At least I'm not aware of any such research. But we also know that such kind of abuses don't change. So there is a very different aspect of how you look at abusers versus abusers who are narcissists, and they may have different reasons.
Okay. So, Aarti, when you're saying that such kind of abuses cannot change, that means there are abuses they can change. This.
Yes, yes. So what happens is that, for example, like we just mentioned, that a lot of abuse may become maybe incidents in life. Certain things, maybe you're passing through a phase where your personality gets affected. So personality is more deep-rooted. I would rather say behaviors, right? A pattern of behaviors might get developed. For example, if you are running through a very long phase of unemployment, anybody, spouse, parent, or sibling, let's say any adult, okay, and they have this close relationship amongst somebody in the family, and they have been nice and good and all. But suddenly the situation changes for one person, then that also affects the relationship. The equation changes. Then a lot of frustration can either be directed outward or inward in terms of the family environment. So when
Mm-hmm.
that happens, there is a lot that is possible as a solution because your stimuli is external. Your stimuli is something that you've seen in your waking life as an adult. You're not really that person. You're not technically that person, if I may use a word like that. You're not technically that kind of person. Some incident has made you that. For example, God forbid, but if somebody has to go through a massive, massive, massive accident and breaks a lot of bones, as in lying in, hospital bed for 2 years, and suddenly, you know, okay, now it's time to do something about life and get up and they start realizing that they have weaker bones, their muscles don't work as well, and this and that. That is a frustration out of their physiology. The accident wasn't in their control. The fact that they were lying in hospital bed for 2 years wasn't in their control, but they still want to do something with life. They want to go ahead and start either feeling normal, the pre-accident times, or they have to do something from whatever the situation is giving as a possibility at this time. If the family environment is something that they see as being the direct target and they feel very frustrated and angry about certain things because of their incapability of being the old self, then their abusive self might come out. But this is treatable. The reason is that because that person has, not that any abuse is justified, but look, we have to see the reasons of why it is happening also, right? That person has already so-called lost 2 years of his life. They're trying to get back to normal. A lot of frustration. Why go far? Why go unrealistic? Why go hypothetical? In COVID times, in the last over 2 years, we've seen a lot of behaviors in the families changing. We've seen different personality traits. We've seen different sides of people. We've seen that even though COVID is one thing that is common to the universe, it's common to the world at this time in humanity, we're all responding to it differently.
Yeah.
Some people, if they have lost their businesses, they've lost a lot beyond finances.
Mm.
People have gone up to committing suicide. Right? And then on the other hand, some people have just kept on fighting and complaining and being distressed about the situation. All these things also form a foundation for abuse between relationships. Such abuse is possible to reverse and treatable with counseling, with help, with a lot of spiritual practices. There's just so much available. However, when I say abusers who don't change, who are these kinds of abusers? Abusers who have narcissistic personalities are expected not to change. They are not result oriented. They are not solution oriented. and they don't care for a change. They don't care for a change that you would consider positive, right? Or the society would consider as positive. They are the kind of personality they are, and they think it's right, and it's don't talk to me kind of a situation. So
Mm-hmm.
psychopaths and narcissistics, definitely those kinds of personalities, they have a completely different foundation, whatever that may be for them, completely different foundation, and it's hard to change, or rather nearly impossible from what I know.
Okay. So, Aarti, we have lot to discuss and we are running out of time, but would you like to add on more of why concepts, anything, any points that you would add, and then we would go because our audience has responded so many things, we can go on
Yes,
reading with that.
I can see that too. I do want to acknowledge the audience, and I'm not sure if I missed. There was a nice big message from somebody who mentioned that. I just wanted to add this that there are a lot more whys, and audience is welcome to go ahead and sort of research if they are finding some incidents around them that they want to figure out the reason why, and there's just so much in terms of behavioral traits. There are a couple of other things. In again, social conditioning or cultural conditioning, emotional abuse can become a weapon for demand of dowry in patriarchal societies where dowry, even matriarchal societies, where dowry is a very common aspect of marriages because that keeps again the individual spouse under control. So, on moving from behavioral aspects, if we look at the social aspects of it, dowry can be a very.
Your voice is cracking.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're saying that moving on from behavioral aspects to social aspects, dowry can be a very big reason to keep the person under control with emotional abuse. So that's one of the things. The other thing to register in mind is that a key concept is that an abuser is actually opposite of an empath. Okay, I would like audience to note that the abuser is the opposite. Usually, you would find at least narcissistic abusers going for their praise as somebody who's an empath,
Who is, pardon?
who's an empath.
Okay.
Okay, empaths are very sensitive, very usually more compassionate in nature. Usually see others' problems as theirs. Usually can bend over backwards to help other people. And the narcissistic personalities are usually on the lookout for people who are empathetic in nature. And one of the aspects about being empathetic is that you can easily fall prey. And again, this is not a generalized norm, but there is a lot of research on this as well. That an empath can see goodness very
Hmm.
easily. An empath can get naive very easily, and an empath can, believe. If you spin stories of uh, अरे मेरे साथ तो ऐसा हुआ अरे मेरे साथ तो वैसा हुआ or being looking very good in front of an empath can make the empath attract towards you very easily, and narcissistic people are extremely good at doing that. So one of the clear personality traits between who is an easy prey for a narcissistic person, it's an empath person. So check out, you guys, all you empaths, be careful.
But
So that's
empaths feel like they can help the other party or help the other individual, and other way around, they attract the narcissist in their life.
That's because the empath personality itself is to, trust and believe and get swayed by sob stories, things like that. So somebody saying I'm an empath, Rini.Bhardwaj, I'm an empath. I'm not sure, Rini, if you have faced anything like this. God forbid you do, but yeah, just look out for signs or red flags of some narcissistic personality at your end. So
So, okay,
yes.
going with some points which our audience have shared. Reincarnate Academy shares that environment is a great influence. She has acknowledged something which you have said on that. Mansi Srirang is saying that how to deal with any any such insecurities within us or that we see in the people around us? Would you like to take this question?
What does that
When
question
we
mean?
when we were talking about that, because of the insecurities, they turn out to be
Hmm,
an
hmm, hmm.
abuser. So, how to deal with such insecurities within us or that we see in the people around us? So, there
Okay,
might
great
be two
question.
aspects of
Hmm,
this
great
question.
question. So if it is for yourself, I think the first thing is of course to be aware. Unfortunately, a lot of us are not even willing to accept that there is some kind of an insecurity we are dealing with. We get very comfortable with our behavior and the way we deal with situations, and we feel it's okay. And we feel it's okay to, continue to behave like that. So I think the first thing is awareness, and the moment you're aware, I think one of the best routes to deal with those insecurities is go to a coach. You don't really have to seek medical help for these kind of insecurities. They may be rooted in something more delirious, something more painful, but that's okay. It's a part of investigation when you speak to a coach. So that's for a person who's experiencing insecurities for themselves, but for some others, that's the more difficult part because you may recognize it, but it's a difficult conversation to make with someone else if you see insecurities, because what you see as insecurities may not necessarily be an insecurity. It may be your interpretation of it. So I think the easiest path, depending on your relationship with that person, is to just sit them down and try to take them through a process of understanding. You try to understand why they may be behaving the way they may be behaving. And if you feel they need to be referred to, why not? They can go to a coach as well. But the whole idea is not to again give them any kind of advice, because some people, most people might not take it well. It's an ego issue. It's also something that's to do with you know I am right where I am, and you are right where you are. There can be these kind of stands as well, right? So just try and understand. Just try to be objective. Why would that person be feeling the way they're feeling or the behaving before labeling it as an insecurity? It may not be an insecurity.
And I may add on this, Arti, because if you're observing that the other person is insecure, and because of that insecurities, if that person is an abuser, and if you try to poke or let them know that you have these insecurities, that may probably tend to provoke them and may tend to increase the abuse. So this has to be dealt with very careful, because again that a person is becoming like you're highlighting the insecurity of a person, and that may create more of an issue. So first, the person who is observing and understanding, if you are an abused person, you have to first be in a very strong way so as to deal it. It is not easy to deal, and you have to be very careful on that. Don't go head on and saying the person that it is because of your insecurities that we are facing this. It might
Mhm.
end in a very negative form.
Correct, very correct point, Suchi. Thanks for adding that. It's if we don't want to provoke the situation in any way because it might just turn out to be worse for you. Like,
Right. Pasta is saying that mostly people don't even realize that it is emotional abuse. Husband talking the loudly and rudely is normal in the normal Indian culture. That we have taken this already. We have taken this concept. Okay. Um, how how does one deal with this kind of abuse when you know it's unintentional and the abuser does not even realize the impact of the actions?
okay, good question. Um, sometimes, sometimes it may be the case that we think of it as an abuse because we are sensitive by nature. Okay, so there's a very thin line. It really depends on individual situations, I feel. Are we really looking at it as abuse, or are we being sensitive, or are we actually absorbing a person's behavior way too much and taking it too seriously? There's just too thin a line, so it really depends between relationships. First of all, but are we really defining it as abuse? If you feel that it is abuse and you feel it is unintentional, then you probably already know a lot of that person, of their personality. You're already aware of it. are you communicating with them about it? What are the stakes? What are your fears around this abuse? And what is the impact that you're really facing? As you say, I'm not sure who's asked this question, but if there is an abuse and if there is an impact, is it a possibility for you to even list it down and see where is that abuse? What is that incident? Is it a pattern? And secondly, if you're calling it an impact, what is that impact? What are your fears around it? So I think this question needs a little deeper discussion as such, but I'm not sure if I've been able to answer this for you, whoever has asked this. But I feel that
It continue.
I feel that there is this area of mystery that we have in an abuse like this, where we say it is unintentional, where we say there is an impact, and where we say that we feel the abuse. So I would say connect the dots first.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was Rashmi Rao Ahul.
Okay.
We will get to connect with her and then
Question,
get into
Rashmi.
the deeper discussion. Reincarnate Academy again says that only with the realization comes change. In such cases, they don't even realize. Absolutely, we have covered this point. Your discussion is very valuable. Thank you, 365 billions.
You're a regular audience. Thank you, 365 billion.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Rini said I am an empath. Okay, I have had discussion with Rini regarding this. How to deal with the insecurities is again the question. Uh, so, see, insecurities cannot be discussed, I think so, in one or two lines. So, whosoever have the issues of dealing with insecurities, I would recommend to connect personally so that we can understand which portion of insecurities exist and because for everybody insecurities are not same. It cannot be clarified or cleared with this discussion. So let's go ahead. Please connect with us and then we can deal with this question
One
in
point to add there, you rightly said that insecurities are obviously different for each of us. We have different reasons for it. Insecurities can also be short term or long term. So
right.
attach limited importance to that and take it from there, case basis.
Okay. Sarina, Arti, lots of love. So from Sarina, there's a message. Arti, lots of love. Thank you, Sarina, for that.
Thank you.
Very true, ma'am. Thanks, Arti. Thank you, Arti and Suchi. Very valuable answers. Thank you, Mansi, for acknowledging. Thank you, Rashmi, for acknowledging. Rashmi and Arti, Mansi, for those who feel that your answers need a deeper understanding and you want some more clarity, do connect with Arti. She is ready to help and she will give a quality time on your personal questions, and it would be very easy for you to take on related to you. We are talking about in a general concept over here, and for you it might be something different, and you will get better understanding once you connect one to one with Arti.
Right. Thank you everyone for your lovely, generous comments and questions and love. Thanks a lot for that for Suchi and me. Any
Thank
more
you,
questions?
Arti. No, we have come to an end with the questions for today. All of you who are watching this video right now or may want it later, and if you do not want to disclose yourself anything, you can share your questions. We may take the questions in our next and last episode regarding to emotional abuse and anything which you want us to cover, any topic, so that we can take that topic for you under this headings of emotional abuse. We are open for your suggestions, and thank you for joining us and uh, participate with us, because this participation help us give more and more inputs from our end.
Absolutely. Very encouraging, Suchi. Loved your video there for a bit. Yeah, very, very encouraging response from our audience in this series. And yes, we will close next week on the series with all the questions. Welcome from now on until next week in either Suchi's DM, my DM, or if you have our other channels, please let us know. And yes, we will be prepared for your answers. Your
Thank you,
questions
Preeti,
are
for your
answered.
thank you, Preeti, for your love and support. Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye,
you, Preeti.
everyone. See you on our next episode of Emotional Abuse. Till then, stay calm, stay safe. Bye bye.
Bye.